Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. This is a time of year a lot of people younger people are beginning new careers, opening new doors. They just finished school, the graduates. Today's show is going to be directed towards young graduate nurses. And all of the information we're presenting today, of course, will apply to even the oldest senior nurses that are still working. Um, but I have a special guest today. Her name is Jen Johnson from Canada, and her specialty is nurse burnout. She's going to tell us how we can enter this career with all and keep the enthusiasm we got on graduation day. And a lot of the principles are not just for new nurses or new graduates of any kind. They actually apply to most of us in our everyday lives uh, because stress might have different labels or different causes, but the ways of coping are pretty much universal. So I'd like to welcome Jen.
Hello, how's it going?
Hi. Great to have you today. I've been a nurse, I guess, over 45 years now. I don't know anything about burnout,
Impressive.
right? But tell us a little bit about yourself and how this became one of your little subspecialties.
So I'm Jen Johnson. I'm out of Hamilton, Ontario. I have been an ER nurse for over 18 years now. Um, Fell into nursing after failing an organic chemistry course in university, and thank goodness for it. Um, so got into nursing. Have traveled around Northern Ontario, Southern Ontario, and hospitals big and small. And it wasn't until burning out hard during COVID at the front lines where it became, very much something has to change because I'm not operating at my peak performance. And what else can I do to make sure that I can continue on in nursing because it is a true love of mine. Ended up writing the book on intuition and nursing, and that's led to speaking gigs with new graduate nurses and talking to them and, feeling that excitement coming from them. And they want to be so prepared for nursing, but we're not supporting them as best we can. So that's kind of where I've come into play. I'm going around and teaching courses on grief and nursing and intuition and nursing and how important sleep is in nursing and trying to really tackle the topics that we all think are kind of soft skills that nursing school doesn't have the time to teach, and it takes a few years to figure these kind of skills out. But the new graduate nurses are leaving in droves by year 2. And I'm hoping that by offering these courses first and foremost when they first graduate, that maybe we can help let them know that they are supported and that nursing is not what it was 60 years ago. The role has changed, but the education hasn't quite caught up just yet.
Okay, well, if you think about it, 60 years ago was a time when it wasn't unusual for a nurse to maybe have 60 patients in her charge for medications and treatments.
Yeah.
I've had some of those shifts. Um,
I can't imagine.
and the one thing that education, I think, between me starting and perhaps where you came in, or even especially the new ones now, is that um, we weren't warned, but we were just it was presented to us as this is what the expectation is, and
Yeah.
most of us didn't know that there could be a better way. Uh, I've reached several points in my career where I was burned out, and first of all, I fell into nursing too. I went to the college to take a guitar class, and it was during the the nursing shortage. People were camping out in the hallways of this particular school, and I had never considered being a nurse, but I'm very competitive, and somebody who was with his in a sleeping bag at 10 o'clock in the morning in the hallway was telling me there were 100 slots and there were 1,000 of them. He just finished counting all 1,000. Trying to get into those 100 slots. I, at that point, had had several other careers, a special ed teacher, a research chemist, mom of now 3 kids under 4, and, with an aerospace engineer husband who didn't wanna pay for daycare with 3 kids at that age, and I was breastfeeding. So when he suggested stay home for a year, why not? I was also an accountant too in that pile. I'm one of those kids that haven't decided what I'm gonna be when I grow up. But I remember doing, and I worked and specialized in whatever area I was working in, I got the certifications. You can't keep them up because I assume they're the same certifications in Canada, and they cost like $300 to $500 each time you want to renew them. So
Yep.
you don't get a good return for your money for those, but you do get knowledge that is important and gives you confidence. I think that's one of the important things. But I had actually been a nurse probably 10 years, where one day I had an mind-blowing epiphany where it's like, oh my God, I learned this in nursing school. And it felt like that was the first time I was actually doing something I learned in nursing school. It truly is an on-the-job training job. Um,
Yeah.
I remember another time doing home care and hospice. Hospice is a high burnout area. And I had these 2 sisters, one was dying of breast cancer, 2 little Italian ladies. Her sister Mary would say 1,000 Hail Marys for her every day at her bedside. I got there later than usual that day, and I kinda made a joke. I said, "Oh, you got a late start, you're still praying." She said, "No, I finished Jenny's Hail Mary hours ago. This 1,000 is for you because at the rate you're going, Jenny's gonna outlive you." And, it opened my eyes. Oh my god, I was going through a divorce. I still had 4 kids at, grade school, and I realized the patients see us when we're burned out, and
Mhm.
then they don't there's some that get angry because we're burned out and we're letting it show, which is the human part, I guess, but they also feel almost obligated, especially if they're enablers themselves, to take care of the nurse and don't give her too many more problems to deal with.
Yeah.
And, patients should never feel that way. I mean, we know what we got into pretty much when we started. Um, my school didn't have any rose-colored glasses to look through. But I remember, well, one of the things I wanted to be when I grew up as a kid, I wanted to be a clown. I was just a lot of people hate clowns. They're scared of them. There was a clown college in Florida back then. They've long since gone out of business because none of the parents would pay for it, I assume. My parents wouldn't consider paying for clown college right out of high school. Um, but years later, maybe I had been a nurse about 20 years, I was dealing with some oncology problems myself, and I met the hospital clowns at my local hospital. Bumper T Caring Clowns, the national organization. And that I was burnt out. I was ready to give up nursing. I didn't think I had anything left. At the same time, though, it made me realize, oh my gosh, as a hospice nurse, I'm selling living wills. And now I've got this diagnosis, and there's no way that I'm going to be, writing my living will. Well, you should do your living will, but no ways I was going to plan to check out when I had school age kids.
Yeah.
And, and realizing that, I became a clown, a hospital clown, and it really let me enjoy nursing the way nursing was meant to be. We don't have time now for patient interaction. We're so focused
No.
on, the doctors getting penalized if they spend more than 10 or 15 minutes with a patient. Our facilities don't want to pay us overtime if you have to stay finish your paperwork, but the first week of school, we learned if you didn't write it down, you didn't do it.
Yep.
Um, so, it hasn't changed. It's become even more demanding, I guess. Um, the nursing intuition, the book behind you. I remember calling a resident one day saying, "Hey, come down to the hospital, this room right now. The man is going to code in about 10 minutes." Well, what's his
Mhm.
vital signs is. His vital signs were perfect, but, I knew he was gonna code, and he
Yep.
"What's your name?" And he's busy writing my names so he could report me. By the time he came down, putting his shoes on, because 'cause he'd been asleep, it was night shift, the man was in the we already had the crash cart in the room, and we were dealing with it, and, he said, "Well, how did you know?" I said, "Because it's not all about the vital signs."
Nope.
This it's about the whole person, and that's really how I got into holistic nursing. I look at the whole person, and
Yeah.
so um, so you've been doing, sharing your knowledge and helping people. Do you get a good reception, or do you scare people out of the profession?
Well, and so the first time that I got invited to speak to new graduate nurses or even just new student nurses, it was September of first year, and the teacher kind of goes, "Oh, just talk about your stories." I said, "Okay, do you want them to stay in nursing or do you not want them to stay in nursing?" She goes, "No, no, no, we want them to stay." I said, "Okay, I've got less of those stories." So but in talking to them, they were already asking about burnout and how do you grieve a patient and, what does work life balance look like and how do you manage night shifts? And they were in moment one of nursing school. And I'm thinking, in 18 years, I don't think I've ever asked myself these questions, but you guys are already asking and looking for answers before you're even in nursing school a month. So I'm like, okay, let me try and put something together and bring it forward to try and see what we can do. And so ended up creating a journal that, helped you keep track of the small wins as you went shift to shift and what went well, what didn't go well, were you fully staffed, how many steps did you do, did you sleep well before shift, did you get any meals, and just a way to kind of keep track of your learning opportunities and things that you wanted to like look up later that once you're at home and you've had a day to recover from your shift from hell, you can go back into those notes and say, okay, that was that medication I was going to look up. That was that pathophysiology I was going to look up. And it gives you, that really solid kind of evidence that when you're having that knockdown, drag out shift, you can go back into your own experiences and go, no, I am learning. I am moving forward. It's just maybe it's not what I thought, a win would look like, but I am learning. It is happening. So currently I've got a study that's international going on with the journals. Have got about 40 both new graduate nurses as well as student nurses and just trying to get a handle on what's going on and how can we help and what are we missing that you guys it might seem like an obvious to you guys but we weren't maybe raised the way you were or we're not in the generation that you guys are in and we need to understand better if anybody's going to stick around to nurse longer than a year or two.
Well, that's absolutely true, and yeah, I remember when I first graduated, my 3-year-old came in from playing outside with other 3-year-olds, brought everybody in, and I swear they must have deliberately fallen simultaneously to skin their knees as my Michael comes in saying, "My mommy's a nurse, she can make it all better." So everybody created places to put Band-Aids, Um, and I think a big key I found over the years and, being a clown is part of it, you've gotta keep your sense of humor. uh,
Yeah.
because that is key, I think, for burnout in any profession. Um, you know, it's not a script. It's not an engineering thing where you've got math problems. It's going to actually work. Um, and uh, I think having a sense of humor is one of the basic things. I mean, I teach CPR classes mainly for the Boy Scouts. I don't like teaching them, for professionals. We're going to take a break right here. We'll come back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hey, welcome back to this week's Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and my guest, Nurse Jen Johnson, who spends a large part of her nursing career now trying to keep all the young nurses from quitting so that we can retire. I think that she has an ulterior motive.
I just am wanting to make sure that somebody's going to look after me because I don't know if my two kids are headed in nursing.
Well, I took care of my mother-in-law for several years, bedbound in my house. And when she passed away at a younger age, I said to my 7-year-old daughter, when mommy and daddy need help, will you be taking care of us the way we did mom? She said, are you kidding? I'm going to have a good enough job to pay for care, so I would never do what you do. And that young lady is now an aerospace engineer.
Well, there you
So my
go.
goal, my goal in life is to never depend on my kids. And
Nope.
we know some of the hacks of how to take care of ourselves, but the biggest message I think nurses don't get is that there's a lot of do as I say, not as I do, as we're interacting with patients. Uh,
For
Especially because
sure.
most of my hospital career was night shift, and I used to kind of say it tongue in cheek, but I'd say to the patient, "Well, ask your nurse how much sleep they had last week," because you know typically when a man has a night shift job, he comes home and he goes to sleep. I would come home and my husband would give me the dry cleaning to take, and a list of, what he needs me to do during the day. And then I'd take the kids to school. And the year that somebody was in kindergarten, I got a nasty message from the school secretary. 'Cause we had answering machines back then, not digital. And I had Sylvester the cat on my machine, which said, can anybody suffering succotash, can anybody get any sleep around here? So the secretary would call to tell me that I forgot to wake up and pick up my kindergarten kid, and she was always nasty and angry to me. And she reported me to children and youth because as if I was deliberately trying not to go pick up my kid. Uh,
Honestly.
so and sometimes that best sleep that we get is maybe the hour before we go in for night shift. And, so
Yep.
but so what concrete, ideas do you have for taking care of? Because it sounds nice on a bulletin board or but what do you tell them to stress the importance of taking care of yourself? They don't really believe you when you say that you'll burn out and there won't be anything to take care of you when you're done.
Yep. I mean, first and foremost is you need to be taking care of yourself as your first patient because we are great at taking care of patients. We are absolutely horrible at taking care of ourselves. So, we need to shift the narrative of you're not a good nurse unless you give everything of yourself to everybody else, which is insane. Because again, we are usually mothers, we are spouses, we are doing a multitude of other things that aren't just nursing. And so to be able to say, the airplane says, when the mask comes down, make sure to put on your oxygen mask before putting it on anybody else, and that includes your children. And they mean it because you're no help to anybody else if you're comatose or dead on the ground. So this way, it's not just us kind of saying, oh, we're being selfish and putting ourselves first. It's no, no. We really do need to be putting ourselves and our wellness first and foremost in our minds, because you're no good to anybody sleep deprived, hungry, um, depressed, and kind of not caring about yourself will equate to kind of not caring about your patients, because you can't help but be tired, and your risk of mistakes goes up. And driving home tired after night shift, they've said with science, it's like you're drunk and you're driving.
It's actually
So
worse
you
than
really,
drunk. I remember waking
yeah.
up once, like 6 inches from a parked car and just thanking my angel for getting me home safely. Uh, you know, I can attest, and, I had a therapist in the past who, if she couldn't get through to me, she would say, "Well, what would you tell your patients? And if you really, really wanna piss me off, ask me what would I tell my patients?" Because, it doesn't apply to me.
Well, and we're awful at it, right? So I'm straight night shift right now. Um, After our interview, I'm going up to bed to make sure to have my nap before my night shift. And when COVID hit, and we didn't have, the kids were 4 and 5 at the time. We didn't have any access to daycare. We didn't have any family living close by. So I was up all day with the kids, and then up all night at work, and then up all day with the kids, and then up all night at work. I was a basket case. And, in talking with my therapist, her main thing was, you need to sleep. And I'm like, "Oh no, it's fine. I can function." And she's like, "You're not functioning. I can promise
Mm.
you are not functioning." So, you know,
I wonder if therapists
rest
have a special semester just on how to talk to nurses.
they should. We're the worst patients. We think we're superhuman and we can do it all, and it's probably the worst narrative we could ever say to each other, because we can't do it all. We do need to take breaks. Sleeping for 6 to 8 hours is a basic human necessity. It's not a luxury. So
It
trying
is
to
a
sleep
luxury
after
when
night
you're a
shift,
nurse.
oh yeah, exactly. Because we're trying to do everything, and there's always going to be something on the back end that gets cut out, and it's typically, you know, a really decent meal for ourselves, or sleep, or going to basic appointments like, you know, regular doctor follow-ups, regular dental cleanings. We don't have time for that. We're too busy nursing and taking care of everything else. So we really do need to start putting our needs first and foremost in our minds, and getting over the fact that it's not selfish to do that. It's us trying to do and care for ourselves as well as we care for everybody else.
So that sounds good, though. Do you have practical rules to live by? Like the
Absolutely. So before a night shift, I always nap. I will try to nap as long as I possibly can, whether it's at least 2 hours, up to 4 hours. I'll play a little bit of nap roulette where I won't really set my alarm other than to make sure that I have to get up for work. Um, I try my best to pack my meals ahead of schedule. I really do try not to snack as much as I can at work, although, when the potlucks hit on a Sunday night shift, you can't help but overindulge. Trying to really make those who you live with and love aware that I need sleep. I don't want to be woken up. I will yell at you, and I will be a bear if you wake me up, because, this is just what I need to be able to function. So, really instilling in both the spouse as well as the children early on that mom always has a nap before the first night shift. If you are in between night shifts, you always sleep as long as you possibly can. If you need to take prescription medications that have been prescribed to you by a physician to help you sleep those periods of time, don't be afraid to, because we need sleep. It's really hard to, sleep during the day. Sleep hygiene is a big thing, so making sure, you've got curtains that are blackout curtains. I Best $20 I ever spent was an eye mask that has headphones in it, and so I can block out all the sunlight. I can put on a sleep meditation, and I can just sleep, because my husband doesn't like to listen to anything other than the fan while he sleeps. So, figure out what works best for you and how you can make sure that you incorporate that early and often into your routine, so that it's not a surprise when mom goes, "Okay, I got to go lay down for my nap." Nobody's going, "Well, what do you mean a nap?" Everyone goes, "Oh yeah, you're going to work tonight. Not a problem. We'll see you later." Um those kind of things. But even having married a paramedic who used to do night shifts, he still forgets that his 12 p.m. is my 12 a.m. So if you're going to try and call me at noon, you better believe when I'm working, I will try to call you at midnight.
I remember, well, I mean, science shows that your cardiac output, regardless of what shift you work, it's the lowest between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. That's why it
Yeah.
feels like on night shift we just hit the wall. Those 2 hours are hard to get going.
Oh.
And my second husband, he had worked in the hospital on a 3 to 11 shift, and he would watch the night shift come in with bags of groceries, ice cream, sodas, cake, everything. I didn't know him back then. Although I was working in that same hospital, but years later, fast forward like 20 years, when we met each other, he said, "Well, why do they bring all the groceries in for nighttime?" I said, "How do you think we stay awake? Do you think we sleep on the job? No, we eat ourselves to death." I said, "Yeah," which makes us more tired because we're high on the carbs. Um,
Yep.
but it's the camaraderie of other fools like us, and I remember, counting narcotics at the beginning of my shift and looking down, I had one sneaker and one bedroom slipper on, and I never so those are clues that your life's not working well.
Uh, Thankfully, I think I've only showed up in the wrong set of shoes to work once or twice, and actually, it wasn't too long ago that I showed up in my regular slip-ons, not my orthotic sneakers.
Alright.
And so I said to the girls, I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna slip out of these shoes because they're just a slip-on, and I walk too fast and too sharply for these to stay on." And they said, "Oh, just go in the back because everybody leaves their shoes." And they're like, "Just go find somebody's shoes that are the similar size."
Well, when I was starting, we had to wear clinic shoes,
Yeah.
which I hated. I really, just because I was told what kind of shoes to wear. And part of that was teaching us, I guess, that personal discipline that we obviously didn't maintain after nursing school. But uh, I mean, I was raised with a military family, both parents, so I could make a bed with square corners when I was 6 years old. Uh, but when I got to college, one of my first, not understanding when you talk about sleep ecology, just to rebel or whatever, and only to hurt myself, I refused to make my bed the first few days. And then I found myself right before I would go to bed at night making my bed because you need a nice, crisp, well made bed to sleep. It's part of your sleep ecology.
Yeah.
Um, so everything, Mother Nature is just something I haven't learned how to hack. And we're going to take another break right now. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to this week's Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Nurse Jen Johnson. And we've been talking the fun parts, I guess, of burnout. Let's get a little more practical. What is it fun to be burned out, Jen?
No. And you think, sometimes we talk about it and it feels like it's just a one-time incident. Unfortunately, it is always a roller coaster that you can, you've got your highs and then you've got your lows. So you need to be very careful to when you see or feel yourself slipping a little bit, or your coworkers kind of say, "Hey, are you feeling okay?" It's time to really kind of take stock of what's going on and how you're doing, and what's going on. Is the home life really impacting the work life, or is the work life really impacting the home life? And trying to get a little bit of a feel for balance as to what's going on.
Well, I know I had a couple experiences in my career. One, I was working in a Alzheimer's unit, psychiatric Alzheimer's, geriatric behavioral care, and there was a patient there pacing the unit all the time, cursing everybody, nasty as could be, spitting at people, kicking them, and she was a retired nurse.
Oh
And
no.
I would hear coworkers say, "You're a nurse, you should know better." And I interrupted that conversation. I said, "Excuse me, she's a nurse and she's getting back at everybody that did that to her in her 40 years of working." Um, and then I
Absolutely.
had another experience in a different unit. This one was just a regular geriatric unit, and my leg was, I was in a splint and elevated. I think I had a spider bite then, but I'm at work. I didn't even take time off to take care of, my health needs. And this lady who was always nonverbal or a gibberishly verbal person, she was gibbering at the nurse's station. She was a retired nurse, and I'm watching her, and she sculpted the most beautiful potted plant out of what I thought was clay.
Oh
And
no.
as I got closer, I realized it wasn't clay; it was a ball of feces. But I mean, it was really artistic. I was impressed, and you know, I actually called my son, the same Michael that brought the kids in to get Band-Aids when he was 3, and to ride your bike and bring me my modeling clay. I gave her the modeling clay in 5 seconds. It was in her mouth. We couldn't get her dentures out, all messed up. But then
Oh
she
no.
happened to come back to reality for a split second. She saw my leg was elevated in a cast, and she immediately became a nurse. She started checking for
Mm.
pulses. Are you having pain? All the nurse questions. And I'm like looking at the ball of shit, excuse my language, on the counter, and the dentures that are now in modeling clay, and she's talking to me like a coworker.
Yep.
So was a scary, eye-opening moment for me. Yeah, this is what we had to look forward to. If you're once a nurse, you're always a nurse, even if you try to quit.
We
So
we joke at work that we're going to start up a retirement home that's only for nurses, firemen, police, and EMS, And, the ongoing joke will be when one of us goes down, there's going to be, 150 of us trying to do CPR from 30 different decades.
Well, not just that, but people that do shift work typically have a shorter lifespan because they're not
Yep.
taking care of themselves. That's well documented in science. So, in the remaining part of this section, do you have some specific guidelines? Yeah, we're laughing about it because we'd be crying otherwise, I think is the honest truth. But
Yep.
um, this is why I became a holistic nurse because doing this, I can be what I dreamed a nurse should be doing.
Yeah.
Working for the establishment, it's not always the case.
It's hard, and you're kind of a number if you're within a large healthcare system, and they'd post your job before they post your obituary. And so being aware of that, you really do have to put yourself first. And, you know, if what you realize is night shifts are really not working out for you, figure out what kind of nursing you want to do that's maybe just during the day. Figure it out. Get into that job. Maybe it's the same job that you're in, but there's somebody on a different line that lines up with your line that only wants night. And then you can switch. So right now, I've got a partner who I only do the night shift. She only does the day shift. It works out perfectly for us. And it's not to say that I can't do day shifts. It's just in my season of life right now, with my kids as old as they are, night shift works best. And so once they're kind of a little bit older, can get off to school okay, maybe I will go back to day shift, and see how that goes. But
Well, coming
you
from
know, new,
experience, I'm going to interject here. Night shift employees are a different breed of human. Uh, and it's very, very difficult to join the bureaucracy and the BS in day shift when you've been a night shift employee for your whole career.
yeah, yeah,
We
it's
don't have the same
something else.
tolerance and the social skills that are required to work day shift. But we do have
Yeah,
good rapport with the patients,
yep.
and it's something to think about. Go ahead.
100%. I mean, is it so much easier not to be surrounded by the bureaucracy and having to be exceedingly politically correct every minute of every moment? It's a little bit easier. Everything's a little bit more relaxed on night shifts. However, you don't have near the support that you do on day shift. There are pros and cons to each. And, would I love to go to bed at an average time and have my circadian rhythm go back to normal? Some days that sounds really good. So trying to think about, just because you're in a specific job or specific role right now, if it's not fitting you, get out. If there's bullying on the unit, and you're trying to make a change, unfortunately, if you're not management, you're not going to be able to make much of a change. So get out if you can. Um, you can
Well,
try
I've
for
learned over
six.
the years by becoming a clown, by doing things, holistically and things, which I've always had an interest in. My mother was holistic. There's ways of being who you need to be and be true to yourself.
Yep.
And that's one of the advantages of nursing. You may have started, we all have to get that basic 1 or 2 years, excuse me, of the clinical experience. But if you keep your eyes open, look for opportunities and, really see, like when you're talking to a patient, passing out the meds, really listen to them, not just Mrs. Jones, here's your pills. Ask like, how's your family doing today? Have you heard from them? Or unless their family doesn't show up, that would be a bad question. But we know those kind of people. I
Yeah.
was held hostage once years ago by a man that thought I reminded him of his mother.
Oh
And I was
no.
like in the isolation room, with the reverse airflow and stuff. And um, I became obsessive about washing my hands so I could like the paper towel to write notes. And as I'm throwing it in the trash, I'm really throwing my paper out in the hallway so somebody would call security. And you learn to be creative when you're a nurse.
Yep.
And home care is a good example of creativity. Uh, because
MacGyvering every opportunity. Same with rural nursing when you don't have access to more than, you know, so my first job as a nurse, I was there was only two RNs on the floor, or in the building at any given time with two RPNs or LVNs. and the one RN worked emergency, was at the other end of the hall, and one RN and the LVNs would work the floor. And you want to talk about having no resources. If a code came in, you were calling the next shift in early and getting real creative with things to try and do the best that you could for that patient given what you had.
Well, I remember a night in MICU where we had like I think 4 nurses working the shift. Maybe it was an 8-bed NICU, and the first person codes. And typically, it's a Catholic hospital. The priest would come, the supervisor would come. So we start dealing with the first patient. 10 minutes into that code, 2 windows over, the next third patient codes. So we split up in
No.
teams, and half of us are doing that, and half of that. Finally, the priest walks in, and he says, "Where do you need me?" And I said, "Father, we're running out of people. You'll have to handle the last code. We just had a code over here." And we still kept our sense of humor. Obviously, the patient got the care, and it was a successful night. Middle of that, our dear supervisor, night shift, a little bit overweight. The elevator had broken that night, so she's trying to get to MICU. And then we thought she was going to code next. It was a memorable night. Um, but we got through it, and we got through it because we trust our coworkers, we trusted our instincts, and we knew that there was going to be an end of a shift to relieve
Yep.
us.
You can do anything for 12 hours. Just it will pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass.
Well, I think the computers age and social media and things, it gives us opportunities to network with other nurses to support each other when some of those rural areas don't have that. And with the hospital systems closing because private equity, we don't talk politics on my show, but I'll get as close to it as I can. I don't believe private equity should be owning hospitals because patients and the nurses are the ones that suffer. Um,
Yep.
but it's a reality that we have to deal with. And, it's like somebody asked me once, if a famous person ended up in my ER, what would I do? And I wouldn't like it, but I would treat them. Uh,
And
because I'm a
and
professional
sometimes
nurse.
it's so we've had the same question this way, and it's like, if one of your least favorite people came into the ER who happened to be famous, what would you do? And it's like, well, I would actually, make sure that they were treated appropriately, but they will wait, and they will get the hallway bed if they're appropriate for a hallway bed, and they will wait the 2 days to get up to the floor just like everybody else.
No,
And
that's a fantasy, Jan. That will not
I
happen in any hospital that I've ever been in.
don't know. The Canadian healthcare system's just a little bit different.
Well, that's true. Somebody my age, from what I understand of your system, would be last on the list to get treatment. I've had Canadian doctors,
No.
well-known cardiologists that had to come to our country because they told him he was too old for the surgery he needed. So his 80-year-old wife was working at a nursing home for incurable children. And I felt so bad for them. She had to come back to work for the first time in 50 years so that he could
Oh,
get the surgery he needed. And that's just a reality of another political, story we're not going to get into. But nurses can make a difference by educating people.
yep.
This House of Representatives in our country, several of those people are nurses. Local politicians, nurses are beginning to realize that one way they can deal with their burnout even is by contributing. You're still helping people. You're improving healthcare. You're improving outcomes, and you're fighting for the people that have nobody to fight for, and we know those people better than anybody else. Um,
Yep.
I don't know what your system. I have a hard enough time following my system to know what other countries are doing. I remember a couple friends that were nurses from England that came to our country, and I said to them, "Is your country so bad you really wanted to come here?" And she was telling me what it was like to be a nurse there, and it was not very
Yes,
attractive.
very different. Very, very different system. They've got about 8 or 9 levels, I understand, of, you know, care, where you fall. So with Canada and the US, we've got about 2 or 3. So your LVN, RPN, so your 2 years of college, your university graduates who are your RNs, and then your nurse practitioners. Could you include CNAs or PSWs on the lower end? Sure, theoretically. But for England, there's about 7 or 8 different levels that you can kind of go up and down. And every level, from my understanding, is very, very different as to your roles and responsibilities.
Okay, on that moment, we're actually going to close this section up and go to the next. Thanks, my engineer. He's keeping us, in the straight and narrow. We'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back. We've been trying to offer hope. I hope it didn't backfire to new nurses and new graduates. But you can't put 2 night shift nurses together without being real, I guess. Um, and everybody's going to find their own path. There'll be lots of days that you regret what your choices are, but that happens in any profession. It's not, you know. So, Jen, why don't you, close out the show telling people how to reach you, and maybe if there's any hope for us, offer us some hope.
Sure. So on TikTok and Instagram, you can find me at ernurse.jen, Jenn. You can find me on my website, www.nursejenn.ca. And my email is jenn, Jenn, at nursejenn.ca. If there's anything you can take away, it's that gratitude, it's one of those seemingly kind of woo-woo topics that really, sometimes you really have to take a minute to be very thankful for the things that seem so everyday. So being able to take a deep breath in without any pain or feeling short of breath, especially with the wildfires and everything that's going on, like I'm exceedingly grateful for that. I don't wake up in pain. And, if you can apply that to your shifts, especially the ones that aren't going so well, if you can try and find a silver lining, um, that's probably the biggest thing for resilience that you can do, where if you can turn a negative into a positive, you're more likely to kind of keep at it. And this is coming from somebody who was horrifically bullied for 5 years, and even though I am still fairly bitter, let's be real, about that experience, had I not been bullied, I would have stayed in that town. I wouldn't have moved back down south. I wouldn't have written my book. I wouldn't have gotten to speak and go to conferences, and I wouldn't have ended up here. So, for it being still such a negative experience, there are positives that come of it. And just to try and really focus on those, I think is, one of those small key things that we can do that cost us absolutely nothing.
I think one goal that I've had almost every day of my nursing career is, no matter what specialty I'm working in, and there have been quite a few, which I'm grateful for those opportunities too. But I try to leave everybody that I encounter, not just patients, but even at the supermarket, or if I'm only encountering 30 seconds, leave them a little bit better off for that 30 seconds. And, we're human, so we're going to have our pity parties sometimes. But, as long as you're taking care of yourself, if you can focus on the rough times and keep one foot in front of the other, but focus on the person in front of you who's you're getting paid to meet their needs or whatever. Um, and just be grateful that, that you've got this knowledge, you've got these skills, and uh, it's been a blessing and a curse. And I've been a nurse about 45 years now and doing holistic stuff about 30 years. But that's how I coped. I just kept expanding my horizons and doing what feels right. So, thank you very much for joining. I see a future show coming up in this topic too. And, unless all the hospitals close and there's no reason for nurses to be in the world. Um, it's been a pleasure having you, and I hope you get some sleep
Oh,
today.
thank you so much, and I am very excited to go up to my bed and have a great nap.
You didn't yawn on the show once, you covered it up well, but, go take care of yourself now. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Next week, folks, we're going to have the Bush Whisperer, the shaman from South Africa, is joining us. So we can look forward to that. He's been here a few times. And everybody have a great week. Thank you.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Here's Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.